guys, I just wanted to talk about how we move from our hips. Our hips are a hinge joint, and commonly this goes with the back pain videos. People actually don't move from their hips, they move from their back. This really applies to when we're picking things up. When we go to pick things up off the ground, people round their back, loading their lower spine instead of using their hips, which their hips can actually be a very powerful tool to lift something up off the floor. So there's certain exercises that we can do in general and in Pilates to really focus on the hip hinge. Downward dogs on the reformer or elephant on the reformer, focusing on the movement coming from the hip hinge. Tabletop swing, bookend on the core line, again working from the hips. If you don't have Pilates equipment, then you can do good mornings, deadlifts, and also just lying on your back and doing leg lifts, making sure, again, the movement is coming from your hips, not your back. So we want the spine to stay neutral, and we want the movement to come from your hips. So for a good morning, you can go hands across the chest or behind your head, and you want to focus on the movement coming from the hip joint and then coming back up. Inhale as you go down, exhale as you come up. So some people are really tight through the back of their hamstrings, so they might need to slightly bend the knees until they can gain that flexibility, because it is a lumbar flexibility and a hamstring flexibility that can affect whether we move through that area. If people are going too low, they're more likely to round their back again. It's not about depth and range of motion or a hamstring stretch in general. It's specifically trying to target that hip hinge movement. So that's what you're focusing on. If you were to practice a deadlift, again, legs being straight or bent might be a factor on flexibility, but we're focusing on that hip hinge movement. So when you're coming up, you want to try to keep the movement coming from your hips. Now, this is different than people who lift heavy weights, powerlifting. They might have a little bit of a curvature through their spine, but there's a technique to that. If we're focusing on stabilizing the spine, moving through the hips with a lighter weight, that's where we want to think about sending the hips back. Picture the wall behind you and reach for that wall as you hinge and then come back up. And then the other one I was talking about was the leg lift. So if you were lying on your back, you would just lift and lower your legs. So your pelvis should be in a neutral spine, and whether your head is down or not, the chin, peel the shoulders up. If your head is up, you want to look towards your kneecaps. And then from the hip joint, you're going to lower. Keep your spine the same as you lift your legs. Inhale down, exhale up. Now I could get a bigger range of motion, but then it means I'm moving through my back, where I'm really trying to focus on that hip movement and getting that hip flexion. So just practicing moving through the hips instead of the low back to work on that power through the hips. And then as you're picking up things, you might find that you're not using your back and aggravating your back injury as much. Thanks.